It's October, we're well on our way to autumn, but that doesn't mean that your plants have stopped growing. The warm temperatures inside your home will probably mean that your plants will continue growing all year long. So that means there's always things to be done. So let me show you the things that I'm doing to keep my plants in tip-top shape. And we're starting by getting ready for some winter colour. To give your gloomy winter, and especially your Christmas, some colour to brighten it up, I highly recommend that you plant one of these. This weird looking thing is an amaryllis bulb. So amaryllis is a indoor flowering plant, winter time. So if we plant one of these up now, it should be ready for Christmas. I'll show you what to do. It's a good idea to put your amaryllis bulb into a nice decorative pot. So I think terracotta looks nice. I wouldn't normally put it in terracotta, I would normally glaze it, but I've not got any glazed ones left over, so I'm gonna have to put it in glazed and keep my eye on it. So the idea with your amaryllis bulb is to not put it in a pot that is too big. It wants to be snug in the pot. So that's about the right size pot. So when I put it in, it's only going to have a couple of centimeters around the edge, and that's ideal for an amaryllis. And the other point is that you want to bury 2/3 of the amaryllis, but not the top third. So I'm going to add some soil to the bottom like so. I'm going to size this up, get the roots sat on top of that soil, and I want it just poking out from the top of the pot like so. Then it's a case of just filling around it. So I'm using Cybotanica's Universal Mix, that you can get a 10% discount by using my link in the description. So I'm just filling around. So it's quite snug in here. It's quite difficult to get my fingers between the pot and the bulb, and that's ideal. They want to be snug. So give it a little taparoo. So I'm just burying it so that the top third of the amaryllis is poking out of the soil like so. Just give that a little press around the edges to make sure it's securely in there. Another tap. So that's what you're looking for, snugly in there. And then the next stage is to give it a drink. That's what I'm going to do. Give it a drink all around, just make sure all the soil is nice and moist. And this will activate the bulb now to start sizing up and start sending out its red shoots. So you can get amaryllis in all sorts of different colours, but because I'm aiming for Christmas, I've gone for red, nice red flowers. And like I say, they take about 6 to 8 weeks to flower. So if you start doing it at the beginning of October, it should be ready in time for Christmas. So that is it all watered, and I let that run through. It's important to have a drainage hole for your pot so that the water can run through, because it doesn't want to be sat in wet soil. And then you want to put it somewhere relatively warm. Doesn't have to be hot or anything, but just a nice 20 degrees Celsius or something, and nice and bright. They like direct sun, so I'm gonna put it on my windowsill. The biggest enemy to our plants at this time of year is radiators. When the heating comes on, the dry air starts swirling around, and autumn and winter is the time when our plants can tend to look a little bit ropey. This is particularly true if you've got your plants sat on top of a windowsill with a radiator underneath it. You want to think about moving them away somewhere else. So I've got this Ficus elastica here, rubber plant, and as you can see, it's nestled right against this column radiator in my dining room. Got this stem here that's practically touching it, in fact it is touching it. So to get the best out of this plant during the tricky season of autumn and winter, I'm going to have to move it. Right, I think it's going to have to live here. So it's now a good 1.5 meters away from that radiator, but it is right up against where Mrs. Sheffield works. So I don't know what she's going to say about it, but that's a worry for another day. Do make sure you download my free Plant Problems Troubleshooting Handbook that you can get with the link in the description to this video. It goes over all the common problems that you see with your plants, like leaf drop and mushy stems and leaves, why they happen, and what you can do about it, all in an easily digestible digital handbook. And it's completely for free. I've got my Philodendron Whipple Way with me here, which is a very beautiful plant. It's a new plant for me that I got in my unboxing video. I've imported it all the way from Asia, but it's grown very handsomely since I got it. Lots of new leaves, and it has now got some arrowroot at the back of the stem. And this is a massive wasted opportunity, and there's only one thing for it. So this plant is absolutely begging to have something to climb up, basically. That's what these area roots are for. They want to attach onto something to climb up, strengthen it, and then size up the leaves, mature the leaves. That's what happens. So I'm going to pop this guy onto a moss pole. So you can use a plank of wood or bamboo sticks if you want, just as support for the area roots to start using to hoist itself up higher and higher. But I'm going to use a moss pole. So I've got here a plastic moss pole that I got from Amazon. There's lots you can choose from, and I filled it with Cybotanica's sphagnum moss. I've not got these listed in Amazon yet because I don't necessarily recommend this particular plastic moss pole, because the top and the bottom, the bit of plastic is too big. So when you stack it, you've got too much plastic and there's not enough room for area roots to grow into. So I don't necessarily recommend these, but this is what I've got on hand at the moment. So until I try something better, I'm not going to recommend them. But anyway, it should be okay for this. So what I'm going to do is get this guy out of the pot, hopefully in one piece. There we go. Just break off some of the chunky soil. Okay, now I've got a bigger pot. I'm going to size everything up. I'm going to pop this in like so, and then see how this fits next to it. There we go, that should be okay. So what I'm going to do, I've got some soil here. I'm going to put a base layer at the bottom. So you want a pot that's big enough to support both the moss pole and the plant root system. So I'm trying to keep the crown of the plant more or less at the same level, the same depth. So I just need to add a bit more soil, like so. Just press it down. Pop this guy in up against the moss pole, like so. So you want where the roots are going out of the stem, you want that side to be against the moss pole, so that the roots will start growing into the moss and it will strengthen itself, become the secondary root system for the plant. And it doesn't have to rely so much on the pot of soil that it lives in. The moss pole becomes the main kind of support system, and then you can keep stacking your moss poles and grow a nice big mature plant. I'm just filling around with some soil, just topping it up. It's looking pretty good. And then I like to just put some soil behind the moss pole to stabilize it. That should be pretty good. So I've not buried the crown too much. So that is up against it like so. And then the next stage, once you've got it more or less planted up, is to get some tape, which I thought I'd forgotten, but I hadn't. And just tie the stem to the plastic pole. So I'm just going to cut off a piece like so, and then tie the stem. There we go. So that is now tied on. The area roots are up against it. And it'll start growing into it, and we'll have a nice big specimen on our hands in no time. Autumn and winter is a bit of a tricky time for our plants, our indoor plants, because of the longer nights and the shorter days means there's less light available, and plants want light above everything else. So there's a couple of solutions to that. You can move your plants around your house, maybe move some sensitive plants nearer to the window, but that can be a little bit tricky if you've got radiators underneath your windowsills, which a lot of us do. You don't really want to be putting plants there because it's going to dry out the plant, basically, a lack of humidity. So a solution that I like to do is to add more grow lights. I've already got about 8 grow lights in the house, so why not add another one? So I've picked up this Sansi grow light, and you can get a 25% discount off Sansi with a link in the description, by the way. So I've got this Sansi clip-on grow light with 2 bulbs, 10-watt bulbs each, and I've got some plants here on this fireplace mantle that is a good 1.5–2 meters away from the window, so they will suffer in autumn and winter. Especially this Anthurium here, a relatively new plant that I got. This will probably start to go crispy brown on the edges because of the lack of light. And then this Alocasia elephant ear will start to go dormant. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try, if it can reach, and clip this light onto this shelf here, bend it down like so, and then turn it on. then these two plants at least will have some good light during autumn and winter. This Philodendron New Red is the perfect example of how a plant will follow the light like a moth does, because it's tucked behind this wall here, and as you can see the stem has got all twisted as it's trying to search for the light from the window that's behind me. So it's become quite a lanky specimen. It's put on quite a lot of growth this year, and it's not really sustainable as it is because it's so lanky, it's already toppled itself onto the floor. So I put it into a bigger pot, but I don't know, I think this plant needs to be sorted out, and I'm not really sure what to do about it, but I guess we'll figure it out together. So basically, I don't think repotting this guy is the answer, because it's basically been supported by the heavy porcelain pot that it lives in. If I was to get it out and just have it in its nursery pot, plastic nursery pot, then it topples over very, very easily. There you go. So this guy, I think, needs to be cut back. So what I'm going to do, I've got my big pruners here. I'm going to make a cut on the plant about there, just underneath that leaf node. There we go. So we now got a top cutting that I'll put there for the moment. So this guy will now, where I made the cut, grow a new stem. Hopefully it'll grow in a straight fashion. I'll have to get a stick on it to support it so the same thing doesn't happen again. So I'm not going to chuck that away, that will just continue growing. I might just pop that back in its porcelain pot like so. And then I basically propagated this plant. So I've got a nice top cutting here. I'm going to start by removing some of these lower leaves. So we're removing the lower leaves to help the plant to help the cutting in the rooting process. If you have too many leaves on a cutting, then it's going to draw too much water from the cutting. And it's going to be much, much slower to grow roots. So you only want just 2 or 3 leaves at the top, basically. So I'm just tidying it up as well. And also the other reason is that if you pop the cutting with leaves at the bottom into soil, then the leaves are just going to rot. That's going to seriously compromise the cutting. I'm going to chop that leaf. So it looks a bit drastic doing this, of course. But I think it is better for the long run. And I've also got a free plant on my hands now. So it's a bit of an awkward shape, as you can see. It's a very twisted cutting this is going to be. So I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do it. I might have to just cut it back a bit more in between that leaf node. So it's got lots of area roots, which are good. So this will help the plant, or help the cutting make roots. So I'm just going to get rid of some of these sheaths that have grown from when it puts out the leaves. Okay, I think that's where the new leaf is going to come out from. Okay, still a bit awkward. So I'm going to put that aside. So I've got a pot ready-made of Cybertanica's Universal Mix. So you can put cutting straight into soil. You don't have to put it into water or perlite. They will grow roots in soil, but you just won't be able to keep an eye on progress. It's probably easier, in fact, to do it straight into soil, just because you're not having to worry about transplanting it after it's grown roots in water. It just grows roots straight into soil. Okay, so I've added my cutting. I'm trying to get it nice and deep into the pot so it stabilizes itself. There's going to be a change of plan. I'm going to empty this soil a little bit, just so that I can get it in the pot. I was struggling to force it in. So what I'm going to do instead is to half fill my pot with soil, grab my cutting, like so, and then backfill around it. Okay, so that's nicely in there now. All that's left to do, as with any repotting that I do, I always give the soil a good drink. And it's especially important with cuttings because you want the cut end to have some nice moisture to start growing roots, like so. So I'll put this in a nice bright spot for it to grow roots. It probably will do a bit slowly now that we're in autumn, but it will grow roots as long as you've given it enough light. One of the big mistakes you can make at this time of year is to make your plants go cold turkey, to stop feeding them whatsoever. Now you might have read or seen a video to say that plants will stop growing during autumn and winter and then we should stop feeding them, but in my experience, that's not really the case. I always find that plants like this jade plant here will continue growing in autumn and winter because they're living obviously in our warm homes and there is some light, so they will continue growing. So I will feed, as I normally do, my houseplant Focus by Growth Technology, and I'll feed away like this Monstera here. This will continue growing, so I will continue feeding it. And I will just dilute the feed a little bit, just because they're not growing as vigorously as in spring and summer. So just dial down the fertilizer a little bit by diluting it. Our plants have really enjoyed spring and summer. They've put on tons of growth, but that does mean that they can get a little bit top heavy, a little bit overgrown. And that's exactly what's happening to my Schefflera here. This is my umbrella plant. And it's put on quite a lot of growth this year, maybe a quarter of new growth, the top section. But as you can see, it's looking a little bit top heavy, like it wants to topple over. I do have some bamboo sticks helping to keep it upright, but I think it needs a new pot, looking a little bit too small. Dust and dirt accumulates on our plants pretty much all year long, of course, but it does become more of a problem in autumn and winter because of the longer nights and the shorter days. So there's less opportunity for our plants to photosynthesize, and that is harder still when there's a thick layer of dust on the leaves. So it becomes more of a problem for our big leaf specimens like the snake plant here or Sansevieria. So those big leaves are ripe for dust to collect and settle on the leaves. So you'll often find in your Sansevieria they get quite dusty quite often. So it's a good idea just to grab a wet towel or a moist towel like so and just go in maybe once a month, every couple of months, something like that, and just give the leaves of your big leaf plant a good clean. So this will allow the plant to photosynthesize just a little bit better when the light is not forthcoming outside during autumn and winter. A great thing to do in October is to take your succulent, like this Echeveria or Echeveria, and take a couple of cuttings from it for it to grow roots over autumn and winter so they can start pushing out leaves come spring. So you might not think that you can propagate your plants in autumn and winter, but you most definitely can, provided you provide them with enough light, like I will with this guy, I'll show you in a bit, and give them warmth. If you give them at least, I think it's 10 or 12 degrees Celsius, the roots will continue to grow over winter. So with this guy, you just want to grab a leaf cutting, the lowest hanging fruit. Don't want to go near the top because they're going to be trickier to come out, but the ones nearer the bottom, as long as it's a nice healthy leaf, just grab it and twist it off like so. So there you go, nice and easy leaf cutting. So this will grow roots once you put it into some soil. Believe it or not, that will grow roots. So what I've got here is a pot of Cybotanica's Universal Mix. I've pre-moistened it just lightly over the top, and then all you do is you take your cutting, pop it on top so that the cut end is in the soil, like so. Now you can, if you want to, leave the cutting to callus over for a day or so, something like that, just so that the scab goes over the wound, just so that it doesn't rot the cutting before it has a chance to develop roots. But in my experience, at least for me, touch wood, I've not experienced that. I just pop it straight into soil. So this guy will live just behind me under these grow lights right here. So that's providing them with enough light over autumn and winter. They'll grow roots and they'll start sending out new leaves come spring. If your plants are looking like a real dog's dinner with yellowing leaves, brown tips or wilting, then this video here was made just for you. So make sure you watch it and I'll see you there.